Greetings, all you fine, beautiful, wonderful people. This is me here once again with another video. And today, yes, I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to be doing a tier ranking for the great discography of the mighty Yes. If you're new to the channel, this is just my opinion. I love having discussions about these things. I know I'm probably going to rank stuff and people are going to be absolutely, what the heck is up with me for putting it where I put it. But anyway, let's get into this since there is quite a number of albums to get through. So let's get right there, show the list. So here it is. Top tier masterpiece. Doesn't need an introduction. That's my S tier. Underneath that's almost there. Underneath that is like more than half the album. That's kind of my right there above average. Then you get average. Underneath that, you get like a couple songs. And underneath that is would not recommend. So since we're starting this off right off, it's a long discography. Let's just start ranking some of these. Let's start with the debut, Yes. Sweetness is on this album. I believe Survival's on this album. Gonna put this in like more than half this record. It's a really strong opener. Sweetness is my introduction to Yes. It's the one song where I just listen to, and it always puts me in a good mood. It showed a band that already at this point, you know, there's something already there. Peter Banks on guitar. The first couple of Peter on guitar, I kind of think he kind of came into a band where it started out as one thing, and then after it went along a couple albums, it turned into something different. And yeah, this was a very strong debut. On to the next album, Time in a Word. Ooh, where to put this? I'm going to put this in almost there. I like it more than the debut. I love the title track, Time in a Word. I believe Astral Traveler is also on this record. Just some really strong stuff. On the debut, you had covers, I believe Beatles covers. On this one, I believe you get some covers as well, but it's more moving towards Yes and what they would become known for. There is some phenomenal stuff on here. You can tell they're already starting to work with orchestral elements, really working with orchestration of their songs. And it's quite a step up, at least I find, from the debut. Some might have the debut and more average, but for me, I think it is really good. And Time in a Word is a really great record. On to the next album, the Yes album. Gone is Peter Banks, and on this, they bring in Steve Howe, and it feels like it was the missing ingredient for the band. This, for me, is a masterpiece. Perpetual Change, Clap, and the phenomenal Starship Trooper. I think Starship Trooper, that whole worm section of that song is just orgasmic to listen to. It's an eargasm right off the bat. Just that slow build of Steve Howe's guitar playing mixed in with Chris Squire as well. Bill Bruford on drums. Oh man, just a really, really great album. This is really, to me, the where Yes kind of started that string of phenomenal records is with the Yes album. On to the next album, Fragile. I'm going to put Fragile as a masterpiece as well. I'm not sure if I'm going to rank exactly where I have these in here. I might. But for me, Rick Wakeman joins the band. Tony Kaye's gone, their keyboard player. And right off the bat, you got Roundabout. Oh, what is it? South Side of the Sky. Just absolutely phenomenal songs, and absolutely killer closer. It's just one of those albums that the more and more I listen to it, it's very much what I believe, at least for me, what Amagama should have been for Pink Floyd. The mixture of like four tracks, different members getting time to shine on it. Oh, what is that? Sorry, just looking for the closing track. I'm just having an absolute brain fart for that because I know Roundabout's on here. Heart of the Sunrise, that's it. Absolutely love that track. That's up there and probably for me top 3 Yes songs that I've heard. I absolutely love Heart of the Sunrise. Maybe one of the best closing tracks on a Yes album. On to the next album. This is probably going to be my most controversial album placement because I know how revered this album is. Close to the Edge, I have Almost There. For those who know me, will not be surprised that I do not have Close to the Edge in the masterpiece category for Yes. And I know a lot of people say sacrilege, absolute sacrilege. My reasoning behind having Close to the Edge and Almost There, Close to the Edge of the title track, fantastic. And You and I, once again, fantastic. For me, where it loses it for me, and I've done a video explaining this, is Siberian Khatru. And it took me a really, really long time to figure out what I didn't like about Siberian Khatru. And I think I finally narrowed it down after listening to it repeatedly and trying to figure out why I didn't like this song. So I thought, you know what, guys, I'll come on here and I will tell you why I don't like this song. It has 100% to do with the guitar and keyboards to Siberian Khatru. At times I find it almost, what's the term? Annoying. That's the best way I can describe it. Is at times it annoys me when I'm listening to it, and it just, maybe it's something in a few years it'll click, but at least for me, I'm like, you know what? It's very much, if there is a complaint about that album, I think that's where the complaint is for me. But it's still a really strong record, regardless. On to the next album, Tales from Topographic Oceans. Among Yes fans, maybe one of the most divisive albums. I will put it up as a masterpiece. 4 tracks of just about 20 minutes in length, double album. Each song takes up a side. For me, this is an album where it did take me a while to get into this. And I believe I've mentioned this to Scott before from the Prog Corner, where for me, where this album clicked, there is something about flying in the middle of a blizzard snowstorm with this album on, looking out the window and hearing this journey it was taking me on. It's an absolutely mesmerizing record. Just songs like The Revealing Science of God, Awakening, I believe, is on here. Nous Sommes du Soleil, fantastic. The Ancients, like they're, it's one of those albums where it's more about the journey than it is about each individual song. I know Rick Wakeman has been very dismissive of this album. He did not like it at all. He thought it was too overblown. And then went and while they were recording this, did some work with Black Sabbath for Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. But I think it's one time where I'd say Rick is wrong about this album. I think it's one of those that it does embark on like this deeper spiritual meaning, and listening to it. It's the first with Alan White. Bill Bruford's gone after this. This is Yes at probably the most proggiest thing they could do. And I know there's people that say, well, just because the song's 20 minutes doesn't need to be 20 minutes. Probably not, but it's more about the journey and the destination than it is necessarily other things about this album. But 100%, it's a masterpiece. for me at least. Like I love the whole thing. And when I put it on, get the mood just right to put that album on, it's very enlightening. On to the next album, Relayer, which kind of goes back to the Close to the Edge uh, format of starts off with a giant epic, The Gates of Delirium. Then you have like Sound Chaser. Oh, what's he? And there's one more song on there. But this is a fantastic record. I would put this probably right there behind Fragile, behind the Yes album. I love Relayer, and the more and more I listen to it, I absolutely love it. The problem, or there is something about Relayer, is to me, it's a very abrasive album at times to listen to, like the clash of sounds and styles. It has sort of this weird fascination for me as being a huge fan of a Frank Zappa. It's something has always caught me about that, like music that's very weird, abrasive, kind of very clashing, jarring, and at times Relayer is that. It's an album or The Gates of Delirium is about war, and it is one of Yes's big epics that I think really hits. For me, I think it's Soon, which is the ending of the song, which features some absolutely stellar slide playing by Steve Howe, John Anderson as well. Really great on this track. Gets to bust out many different instruments. He gets to play. It's a stellar record. Like I said, The Gates of Delirium, spot on. Oh, what's there's one track on here I am forgetting about, and I'm just looking it up. To Be Over, the closing to this album, I absolutely love. I'm not sure why I'm having such a brain fart today. It's like, yeah, To Be Over is a great closer. This is the album. I remember the first time I heard The Gates of Delirium because I went from Sweetness. Somebody said check out Starship Trooper. I checked it out. Then I went to Clap, Siberian Catru, and then I went into what was it? Heart of the Sunrise. Then went Close to the Edge. Then I listened to The Revealing Signs of God, and then I listened to this, kind of following this epic kind of track idea, and went all the way up until The Silent Wings of Freedom from Tormato. Or actually, no, I went to Machine Messiah. That's about as far as I went with the Yes epics. And one thing about Yes, they sure know how to write a song. And I think Scott mentioned it that Yes really isn't get going until about the 8-minute mark of a song. But Relayer is a killer album. On to the next one. Going for the One. Rick Wakeman's. Oh, and I forgot to mention with Relayer, Patrick Moraz replaces Rick Wakeman on that. On Going for the One, Rick Wakeman's back. And this features, to me, one of the top 3 Yes songs ever recorded, Awaken. Features also the title track, Going for the One. Parallels, I believe, is on here. Wondrous Stories. And Turn of the Century. Like, Turn of the Century is one of the most absolutely beautiful, beautiful songs that you will ever hear. I'm not sure what it's up about this time in the 70s, but Yes, and a lot of bands had a lot of weird album covers. This is one where I would almost put it up there with the Love Beach and Hemispheres and like kind of what are you thinking? But okay. But the music behind the album works. It is a stellar record. I think it is a masterpiece and really love it. And if you would have thought like, what is this already like 8 albums in? and you have like 5 stone cold masterpieces behind your belt. Most bands would kill for that, but I think Yes really did raise the bar when it came to a lot of these albums. On to the next album on the list, Tormato. I'm gonna put Tormato on like more than half of it. It really is a interesting album to listen to. I believe on the Silent Wings of Freedom is on this album. What else? I believe Arriving UFO is on this album. Let's see what just trying to remember what's on this album. I believe Circus of Heaven's on here, Rejoice. Uh, this is the one album where it's like trying to remember exactly what's on it. Future Times, Rejoice, Don't Kill the Whale, Madrigal, Release, Arriving UFO, Circus of Heaven, Onward, which is one of my favorite Yes songs. Chris Squire pen song, absolutely brilliant. There's parts of this album I really love. There's parts of it where I'm like, okay, it's okay. I think it is better than average. I think it's an album that I think the more I listen to it, the more I think it was probably one of the more misunderstood. I understand why people don't like it. It's very much Rick Wakeman, Steve Howe, the band fighting for every inch of tape. And I think it's something where they needed a strong personality in there to really flesh out a lot of these things. And it's kind of one of those where you leave a band to their own devices. And unless it's like sometimes it really, really works, this is one of the cases where I think they could have had a different voice in there and it could have worked. On to the next one, Drama. Ooh, where to put Drama? I'm going to put it right there. I think it's almost there. I know some people put it in the S tier. This is a great record. Machine Messiah, Tempest Fugit, On the Lens, I believe, is on this album. They brought in the 2 members of the Bungles, Trevor Horn and what's his name? Trevor Horn and Jeff Downs to be on this album. I think it works quite well. I think the one thing it at least gave Yes was a new direction. I heard at the time there was a thought of Chris Squire, Alan White, and I want to say it might have been Jimmy Page, or even have Steve Howe. Like Yes could have done some stuff as a 3-piece. That's something I would have really enjoyed to hear. Is Yes as a 3-piece? I know there was a YYZ option for pretty much in the works. I know Scott was mentioning something. I've read stuff about members of Zeppelin and Yes getting together and doing something, and it was just kind of like one of those things that might have been worked on. I think that's where Mind Drive came from, but this album's actually really good. I really, really enjoy this record a lot. It's one of those where the more and more I listen to it, the more it really grows on you. It's one of those where I think Yes fans, this proved to me Yes was more, I think, than just their members of who's in the band. Because they've always had that revolving door of members, and it really seemed like everything was working. And it really is a great record. Um, and I think it worked quite well. On to the next album, 90125. I'm gonna put it here. Not a not a huge fan. Like I know Owner of a Lonely Heart is the big hit from this album. This, along with Asia's In the Heat of the Moment, you could say are 2 of the best songs prog related bands did in the 80s, which I'm kind of like, I don't know if I agree with that one. But if you're looking for an album that you can point someone and say, what is the most 80s prog sounding band you can find? Yes, would probably be in it. Gone is Steve Howe. He's over in Asia. Gone is back is John Anderson on this record. Trevor Rabin's now on guitar. Uh, Wakeman's not here. It's Tony Kaye's back in the band, their original keyboard player, and it's something really interesting looking at this album. Owner of a Lonely Heart, I know changes on this album, which is a killer song. For those of you who haven't heard it, uh, Hold On, It Can Happen, Cinema, Leave It, Our Song, City of Love Hearts. It's a really well sounding album. It was something new, it was a different approach for Yes. And I think it's a killer record. Um, And if you're looking at it, you're looking at their discography so far, and you're saying, "Wow, you have 5 masterpieces, you have 4 almost masterpieces/masterpieces." You could probably make an argument for any of those, for about 3 of those 4, and then 2 that, well, you like more than half the album. It's a really strong discography to start, and I think the next album, for me at least, is really the first crack in Yes that I really had a hard time, and it is Big Generator. Where to put Big Generator? I'm gonna put it here. Like a few songs off of it. Um, I think the problem with Big Generator is I know a lot of people might not agree with me on this. I think the problem with Big Generator is they took too long working on it, and it came out in a year where the year was very stacked. And the songs, just for me, and I know a lot of people might not agree with me. This is the first time I felt like Yes trying to be someone else than Yes. And people might say, well, what do you mean by that? It feels like there's songs on this where I'm listening to it and I'm like, this feels like something that like another band would do. Insert band here, insert band here. And I understand it's the 80s. And the thing about the 80s that I think a lot of prog fans kind of gloss over, especially talking about the 80s, is there's a term. It's called either adapt or die. And a lot of these 70s prog bands had a hard time adapting to the 80s. The ones that did it really well, you can look at Genesis, did it very well. Uh, yes, to some extent. King Crimson embraced the 80s. Pink Floyd, especially on A Momentary Lapse of Reason, very 80s sounding, but it's still a really damn good record. The But for me, this is the one where I'm like, this was really the big letdown. Where I'm like, okay, Shoot High Aim Low, I know is on this, and the problem I have with Shoot High Aim Low is it feels like something a lot more David Gilmour would be singing than John Anderson. And I know there was a lot of fighting between it of John Anderson, uh, Trevor Rabin, kind of the direction of the album. Other stuff on here, Rhythm of Love, Big Generator, Almost Like Love, Love Will Find a Way, Finalize, I'm Running, Holy Lamb. Uh, there's some good songs on here. I don't quite mind Rhythm of Love to start the album. Holy Lamb, I like. Uh, but yeah, there's a lot of this album where I'm like, Shoot High Aim Lowest parts, but like I said, it sounds more like a David Gilmour. So that's kind of my big gripe with the album is it just doesn't feel like Yes anymore. And I get it, bands evolve to a certain extent. And I think had they released this album a year or two earlier, I think it would have been a big hit. where it might maybe people's perception of it, but at least for me, I'm like, this just feels different. The next album I'm going to include on the list, it's pretty much yes and all but name only. Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe. I know there's people that it's kind of one of those mixed bags. I know people that really, really love this record. I know there's people that don't like this record too much. And I think it's all about really your feeling towards yes. And especially that whole where to go from there. I'm going to put this album. Ooh, where to put this? I'm going to put this album. I'm going to put it here, right in between the debut and Tormato. Because there's a lot of this album I actually really like. Would I put it there? Yeah, I think I'm going to put it there because the one issue I have is I'm not sure if I like it more because I don't like Big Generator very much. But I can't see myself, even with how great some of the stuff on here is. I can't put it above this stuff. I won't put it above Tormato. I really love Tormato a lot. That's kind of my cutoff for a lot of this, is how much I love Tormato and Time in a Word. So there is some stuff. I know Brother of Mine is on this album. The Themes is a good start. Fist of Fire. Then you get into Brother of Mine, Birthright, The Meeting, Quartet, Tiquois, and Order of the Universe. I think there's absolutely some phenomenal, phenomenal stuff on here. Two really long suites. I think for Yes fans, this was what they were waiting for. This is what they hoped Big Generator would be. But you get back Steve Howe, Bill Bruford, Rick Wakeman, John Anderson. All that's missing is Chris Squire. And I have to say, like, it felt really good. Like, I remember seeing concert footage of this tour for Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe. And the more and more and more I watch it, the more you can tell Steve Howe is having fun. He wants to play the music of Yes. Rick Wakeman and his space mullets having a great time. And Bill Bruford. And I know there's people that don't like his electronic drums. I don't have a problem with it. He was one of those guys that had a great way of kind of melding the electronic drums with real drums as well in there. So hats off to that. And Bill Bruford's one of the greatest drummers in Prague. On to the next album, Union. Depending on the day, this will be one of the worst Yes albums. I think that the problem with the album, at least for me, is that it was a great concept on paper, but in practice and actuality, it was always flawed. The thought of bringing Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, Howe, and the other members of Yes together, kind of union. I could see the point of why they want to try this after the fall of the Berlin Wall. Everything's possible, peace, love, all this. We can do an album, but then when you sit down producing it, you have to have a producer that can really manage egos. And I think what really happened is the egos took over. There was session guys brought in to replace parts because one member didn't like it. Pretty much during this, Wakeman and Howe just took off. They're like, heck with this, we're done. Bruford would stick around. I think what really upset a lot of fans is that the tour was so great for this, but the album was such a letdown. There is stuff on here where I was kind of like, is this even written for Yes? Like some of the Trevor Rabin stuff. it's really, really interesting. Like the track listing. Um, Shock to the System I thought was good. Masquerade I thought was good. Uh, but other than that, like there's part of it where I'm like, I don't know how much of this I like, but to me it was just always going to be a very weak album. I know there's Yes fans that like it. They probably have it a little bit higher than I do, but I would not recommend Union. If you're wanting to really get into Yes, that would probably be the last place I'd ever send somebody, or it might be the first place because I'd say, hey, it all gets better from here, I think. But there's some down here where I'm like, yeah, they might give it strong contention. On to the next album, Talk. I know there's people that have it up here. I know there's people that have it here. There's people that have it here. For me, I'll probably say it's average. The Endless Dream is a great song. There's some bits in it where I'm like, you know what, that's actually really interesting on what they're doing. It's the first Yes album to be on oh, what is it? To be recorded using pretty much the internet, and there's just something about this album that it sounds good, and but it does have a very distinctive 90s feel to it, if that makes sense. Like it sounds very 90s, especially with the guitars. uh Trevor Rabin's last album on guitar with Yes. John Anderson on this helped write a little bit more, but it's their 14th album. The Calling's on here. It's not bad. uh But yeah, the Endless Dream Suite is the big part of the album. Walls, uh, there's something about it. I think it's average. Like for me, like I said, I like half the album, and then the other half, I'm kind of like, well, do I like this or is it just? I think by this point, a lot of Yes fans were waiting for something to change in Yes, and the next album did not do it. But in between the two albums, there was the Keys to Ascension albums, which brought Rick Wakeman back to Yes. Steve Howe, they did some recordings, but that's not on here. So only have to go with what's next. And what's next? Oh, geez. Open Your Eyes. Would not recommend. I know there's people that might say, well, I like a couple songs off that album. Oh man, this is an album. The more you listen to it, there is stuff on here where I'm like, this is where it really became, I think, to a lot of people obvious. There's something wrong here. I know some people might even not even call this a Yes album. Rick Wakeman heard the idea for this album coming out so close to, I believe, Keys of Ascension, that he's like, why are we doing this? And he pretty much packed up his gear and left. Billy Sherwood's on this album, Chris Squire, Alan White, Steve Howe's first album back in Yes is this. John Anderson. There's just something off about this. I believe Universal Garden is on here. It's really interesting. Like Open Your Eyes, like Billy Sherwood's in the band. New State of Mind, Open Your Eyes, Universal Garden. I really like the song From the Balcony. Universal Garden, like I said, is good. But then you get The Solution. And this to me is one of the biggest "Why did you do this? This makes absolutely no sense" things Yes ever did. Have like almost a 5-minute song called The Solution, followed by a couple minutes of silence, followed by a hidden track that never gets out of point A, point B. You're like, okay, is this supposed to be a song? It's pretty much no more, no less than noises, like kind of the waves, the beach, an island, and randomly out of nowhere, you might get a couple lyrics from John Anderson. But this never moves out of point A. It was one of those where I'm like, this probably sounds good on paper, did not do it for me. I thought this is horrible. Like, check, please. I'm done. On to the next album, The Ladder. I'm going to put The Ladder right there. I love this record a lot. Igor Korshev, the keyboard player, brought new life into this. Homeworld is a killer track. I love it. Bruce Fairbairn sat down the band, finally got them recording together, and last album he ever worked on, John and Chris, I believe, found him at the controls after mixing this. This is the last album he ever mixed, and it's fantastic. Like I said, Homeworld, uh, It Will Be a Good Day, Lightning Strikes, Can I? He finally convinced John Anderson to actually write sensible lyrics to the stuff and not be this abstract kind of stuff that he'd been doing. He actually made him sit down and write, and I think this is probably one of the best Yes albums in a long time. Like, you could see how high I'm rating this. This is the start of what I think is a great period of Yes. And listening to it, it's magical for me. I know some people don't like it. I love this record a lot. The more and more I listen to it, the more I just fall in love with it. I think it's one of those just fantastic albums. On to the next one, Key Studios, masterpiece. I know some people might not agree with me on this. Footprints, Be the One, Mind Drive, Bring Me to the Power, Sign Language. That is Children of the Light. Like, there's not a bad song on here. If you can find this, which you can find it on YouTube, I believe, fantastic. Oh, this is primo Yes. Mind Drive, like I said, came from the YYZ sessions, I believe, if I read correctly. This is what this should have been. And that's why I absolutely love this record. On to the next album, Magnification. Yes. I'm one of those people that love this record. I think Yes. Didn't have a keyboard player after Igor. Work with an orchestra. I wish they would have done more albums like this because I think it really gives them an interesting sound. But the track listing, Magnification, Spirit of Survival, Don't Go, Give Love Each Day, Can You Imagine, We Agree, Soft as a Dove, Dream Time, In the Presence of, Time is Time. This album is just magnificent. Like, this to me was the last great record Yes ever did. Now it's on to the final four of this. Which one's this one? Like, it's really sad looking after Magnification that there became kind of this. Oh, how do I put it? Kind of like the Yes, just going and changing kind of their sound completely. Like, and by this point, John Anderson's gone for the next album. They bring in Rick Wakeman's son. They bring in Benoit David, and it's kind of sad how it all kind of just played out in the whole thing. It's next up is Fly From Here, and yeah, this is an album I think that gets plagued a lot by uh how do I put it? It's one of those albums that gets really bogged down by the drama of what happened around it. I know a couple years ago they came out with a track full or a little compilation full of Oliver Wakeman's tracks from this album that got left off, and I'm like, you mean to tell me we couldn't have gotten a full album of this with Oliver Wakeman's stuff? The way they treated Oliver pretty much meant Rick, I think, wants absolutely nothing to do with the band ever as long as Steve Howe's there. But and then they remixed it with I believe Trevor Horn, Jeff Downes, and them. It's one of those albums that always just left a weird taste in my mouth. To me, it's just average. I really like the Sweet, but then you get after that, I'm like, yeah, we could have used a few more of those Oliver Wakeman songs on here, but is what it is. You get the Fly From Here Suite, The Man You Always Wanted Me to Be, Life on a Film Set, Hour of Need, Solitaire, Into the Storm, which I think might actually, other than the opening or that big epic, might be the only one I like. But hey, is what it is. On to the next album from this, Heaven and Earth. This is the one I believe was the last one they were to feature Chris Squire on it. Yeah, I believe he played on this. Uh, has an absolutely killer track, Subway Walls. I know a lot of people don't like this record. There's some stuff I really, really love on this record. Subway Walls. I didn't mind the game. Um, Light of the Ages, I didn't mind. There's about half this record I do like. I like a lot more of the stripped back, shorter song lengths, trying to focus more on songwriting for this album. And so I'd put that, yeah, probably an average. On to the next one, The Quest. This is somewhat of a very divisive album for Yes fans. I'm gonna put it here. It's funny, I'm kind of putting it here because I do only like a couple songs from it. The Ice Bridge is one that I really liked. Leave Well Alone, I didn't mind. The Western Edge, A Living Island. There's parts of it I like, and then there's parts where I'm like, it feels a lot like this. But there's something about Yes. They I think Barry from Classic Albums Review said it the best is that Yes never truthfully left the 1980s AOR sound behind. They always kind of kept a little bit of that in their sound. And on this, it feels a lot like this for me, where it's like, okay. But the big thing I love about it is I think it really re-energized the band because I think some of the high points on here were really high, but some of the lows were very, very low. So it's one of those where I can only kind of put it in here because I would recommend it. I think it is worth listening to. On to the next album. Mirror to the Sky. Ooh, where to put this? Yeah, I think I might put this right here. Yeah, I'll put it there. I know that might be a controversial pick. There's parts of this album I think are absolutely beautiful. Luminosity is a killer track off of this one. This is the one where I listen to and I'm like, you know what? It is so close to just something so dark, so menacing for Yes. It's a killer track, Cut from the Stars, All Connected. Were all singles released. I remember listening to it, and the more I listened to it, the more I just got excited for this record because I'm like, it sounds kind of like how Yes sounded on where is it? The Ladder. It had such a Ladder vibe for me from it. Living Out Their Dream, I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about Mirror to the Sky. I really like Circle of Time. I like Unknown Place. 1 Second Is Enough. Magic Potion. I think the 3 songs that got added as like kind of bonus on Spotify. You got them. I always felt those songs belonged on the album as well. Like I think they had a really strong album. I know Yes has said they're probably working on another album, which I'm always up for more Yes. This is kind of a really interesting tier list that I kind of created here. I didn't expect it to kind of come out here. You have 7 masterpieces, 5 almost masterpieces. So 12 albums out of the discography are definite recommends. Like More Than Half, you got another 7 out of here. I'm like, you know what? That's not bad. You only got really 4 albums where it's like, I don't know. But I feel like this is probably, objectively, probably where I think a lot of these albums belong. I know there's some people that are going to have a problem with me having this here because any of these albums, other than maybe Mirror to the Sky and Time and a Word, but these 3 could at least, you could make the argument for them being up here, but not on there. The only album I might have moved up here might have been Tormato, but that's not bad. Part of me even thinks any of these 7 any of these 7 albums could seriously all be in the kind of do not recommend to like a couple songs category. It's kind of one of those sad parts where I look at this discography. This album I may move up here, but it's like, would I? Because I'd listen to all of these before I ever listened to any of these. But anyway, that's my ranking for the Yes discography. Like, there we go. It's done. It's completed. Hope you guys enjoy it. I really want to have a discussion about this. I know a lot of people here, huge Yes fans. I'd love to hear what you guys think of this. Once again, I have to say to you guys, thank you for putting up with me, for watching it. Love it. Love to see what you guys would have where on that list. It's one of those things that I think is always a great musical talking point. But anyway, that's my thoughts and opinions. I'd love to know what you guys think. Comment down below, share it. If you want, make a video response to it even. But once again, I say thank you guys so much for watching. This is me here signing out. Peace.